inside, he sat there and he said nothing. People are like trying to come up with things to talk about because nobody wants to be the first person to suggest that maybe the meal is over. But occasionally this happens where you could remark like, oh, wow, parking is only 50p for 6 hours. Like, that's actually really reasonable. They don't say it like that because I feel like no British person talks like that, but you know what I mean. So complaining here is basically what brings people together. Hey guys, welcome back to the Girl Gone London channel. If you're new here, my name is Kaylin. I'm an American who's lived in the UK for almost 10 years. And today I am talking about the things that British people love to do. Now, before I get too far into the video, one thing to mention is I am in a new surrounding, but don't worry, it's still my house where I have been since March of last year, basically. Okay, so the first thing to notice is that I do have a different background behind me. Don't worry, I'm not breaking any rules or traveling. I have simply traveled from upstairs to downstairs in my house where I've been basically since last March. However, there is good news on the horizon. I actually was able to get my vaccine the day before yesterday. If you want a video about how the UK is handling the vaccines or what lockdown has been like in the UK or my process of getting the vaccine or whatever, comment below, let me know. But this video is not about that. This video is my observations on things that British people love to do. And now, I'm not necessarily saying that everybody loves to do all of these things, but these are things that British people do often as a generalization. So I have to imagine somewhere along the way someone is enjoying it. And before anybody gets offended, I could equally do a video about the weird things that Americans do because there are a lot of them, but this is just the British version. Okay, thing number one. British people like to complain, or what they would call moan, about basically everything, but not in an attempt to fix it. So complaining here is basically what brings people together. You complain with your neighbors, you complain online, you complain in your office, you complain with your family, but you're not actually attempting to solve any sort of problem. And if somebody suggests a solution to that problem, that is basically breaking the rules, the general social etiquette, because you are basically supposed to respond to complaining with like more complaining or validating their complaining. For instance, my husband, who is English, was mentioning something about how somebody on our road was parking along 2 parking spots or something like that. We'll get to parking later, don't you worry. And so he was complaining and he was saying, you know, this person is taking up too many spaces, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, good old American over here, like, why don't we politely knock on the door and we can just be like, hey, like, would you mind, you know, not parking over 2 spaces because we're having trouble getting in? And I was like, why don't we do that? And he just gave me this look like, you have no idea what you're doing here. Why would I ever go and knock on somebody's door and ask them to help solve the problem that I'm complaining about? And I'm like, but what is our other solution? And he was like, there is no solution. I was like, there is a solution. We could just go ask them. And he wouldn't do it because he basically wanted to complain for the sake of complaining and he did not want it fixed, and it will probably never be fixed. And every single time we drive into the neighborhood and see that this neighbor has parked on multiple parking spots, he will comment about it every single time, but he will never ask, he will never confront. And when the neighbor walks by walking their dog or cat or whatever, he will wave politely and be like, hey neighbor, but inside he's seething. Anyway, got off on a little tangent there, but that is what British people like to do. And that makes no sense to me as an American who's like, either shut up or solve the problem. Those are your 2 options. British people love to complain, national pastime. It's just what you do here to bond and to get through those gray days, I guess. Okay, the second thing is British people love to say they're fine even when they're not. And we could take this out to a million different areas. We could go the heavier route like I talked about in the mental health video, where people definitely tend to keep their feelings more inside here and say they're fine emotionally when they're not. But also, the best way I can describe this in a lighthearted way is I was on the train to London once, and there just happened to be this drip, a steady drip that just all of a sudden started from someone's like water bottle or something, or from the train, I don't know, from above our seats. And if we were in the States, there would have been a mass exodus of people like pushing and shoving their way out of this area because nobody wants to be dripped on. Not so on this train with British people. Let me tell you, this man sat there for the entire hour train ride, something steadily dripping on him. Like, he is starting to become wet. His shirt is starting to turn color because it is becoming wet from whatever is dripping on him. And that whole ride, he sat there and he said nothing. Nothing on his face said anything that he was uncomfortable, that he thought maybe he shouldn't be dripped on, that maybe he wanted to move. He just sat there and was just like projecting this energy to the world, like, it's fine. I'm fine. Nothing phases me, nothing bothers me, does not matter. I could get to London and I could be swimming in whatever liquid is falling from the sky, don't care. So that was my first really a funny like visual introduction to what it means to be British for some people. Really not making a fuss, not saying anything, just you're fine. It's all fine. We're fine. You're fine. I'm fine. And never letting on when it's not fine. The third thing that British people actually do enjoy doing is sitting for a long time after you finish a meal and talking. So in the US, when we went out to a restaurant for one of the first times with my husband and some friends, again, my husband being English, we ate at the restaurant, we paid, and we all gathered our belongings to get up, all the Americans. And my husband was over there like settling in because he was like, oh, we're gonna be here for a few couple hours. And we were like, oh, we finished, so we're gonna go now. What are you doing? And it was only when I moved to the UK that I realized that the custom in the UK is not to, whether this is at a restaurant or in a family home, the meal is simply a means to an end to talk for hours. There have been times when we have been sat at a family dinner table like 2 hours after we have finished eating the dessert. It's dead quiet. People are like trying to come up with things to talk about because nobody wants to be the first person to suggest that maybe the meal is over and we can disperse now. Like, people just kept coming up with topics, and that is a very British thing to do, a British way of eating. It's really about the conversation that takes place obviously before the meal and during the meal, but after the meal. Whereas in America, we're like, we have places to go, we have people to see, things to do. Once we've finished eating, maybe we'll have a small chat, a couple of minutes, and then we're out of here. So that is another huge difference that I've noticed and something that British people seem to really enjoy doing. The fourth thing that British people seem to enjoy doing is using cream on everything. And I don't mean like hand cream, I mean cream that you would pour on like a cake or a dessert. So in the States, we don't really do this that much. Like, you might have cake and ice cream together, but British people love to have whatever dessert you put in front of them, and they want the custard or the cream to pour all over it. Half the time I'm like, I cannot even see your cake anymore because it is so completely covered by cream, and I still have not really gotten on board with this. I kind of enjoy my dessert as it is. Some desserts are meant to have the cream like as a component, but in my husband's family, they will just pour cream on anything sweet, and that's just a staple part of the meal, whereas in the US, we don't really do that. So I would definitely say that British people seem to enjoy cream on desserts. Okay, the next thing that British people enjoy doing is a lot of times I would say having regional pride, even if they don't call it pride and wouldn't think of it as pride, but identifying regionally. So there is a huge difference between how people see themselves in the north and in the south of England. Obviously, once you bring in Scotland, Northern Ireland, and Wales, then we've got even more regional differences going on and people being really proud to be Scottish or to be Welsh or to be Northern Irish. And then of course there are also regional differences within the actual countries. And the reason that I pointed this out as something that British people tend to like doing and not so much Americans is we do have some regional pride as Americans. If you've ever been to Texas, you'll know what I'm talking about. And obviously people might be like, oh, my state is, you know, it's decent, it's pretty good, it's whatever. You know, maybe sometimes Californians might have a sort of pride, but for the vast majority of people, nobody is really like, oh yeah, I'm from Iowa and that is like my identity. I kind of mostly identify as American, and I definitely feel like here, and I've had comments in my videos that there is a lot more regionality. Is that a word? Regionality? Sure, it is now. There's a lot of differences when it comes to how people identify themselves and their pride in the UK based on their more specific region, as opposed to just being proud to be British. The whole topic of patriotism and pride in our nationality is a whole different video, but in general, I think you'll find it's more regional here. Another thing that British people love doing, which I have really been exposed to for the past year, is walking to nowhere in particular. So there's just something about being British. I feel like that means you must enjoy a walk. And the difference is, of course, yes, we do walk some places in America, kind of less than others, depending on where you're from. But in America, I feel like we mostly we go for a walk to somewhere. Here, people just like to walk. They like the act of walking. They like the act of kind of saying, which way should we go? This way or this way? And there's no purpose besides getting out and getting exercise and walking. I have to say, after a year of walking, I never want to go for another walk ever again. But it's definitely a British thing to enjoy, is to go for a walk. And I don't mean like hiking. So some Americans will be like, oh, I love hiking. That's different. People also go hiking here. I mean literally walking. Walking around your neighborhood, walking around the countryside, walking, always walking. Okay, the next thing that British people love to do is to queue up or line up. So this is a stereotype and like a funny meme about British people, but honestly, I'm gonna say it's true. The people in London who are not lining up, who are completely busting in front of other people, like those are the annoying Americans or people from out of town. Those are usually not the Brits, because there is just something about being British that means you enjoy waiting your turn and you understand the benefit of waiting your turn and not trying to force yourself ahead. I feel like part of it is just like cultural politeness, this cultural order. My husband and I were joking the other day because we're talking about something and like waiting your turn, and he would be like, if they said that there's one left and there's 7 people talking to me, he was like, you would be the first person to like put your hand up and be like, oh yeah, pick me. Whereas the 6 British people would spend like 8 hours debating who was gonna get it, whereas I would just be like, yeah, I'll go ahead. Americans don't really have the same concept of waiting your turn. If you've ever seen a Black Friday situation, people getting trampled over Tickle Me Elmos back in the day, that's definitely what we prefer to do as Americans, kind of every man for themselves. Here, British people tend to wait their turn, like waiting their turn. And this, again, it's not just a physical kind of queue. I just feel like British people feel much more at peace internally when something has a queue. And also, they really don't like queue jumpers, i.e. people who are line cutters in the US who are trying to go out of turn. So if you are friends with a Brit or married to a Brit or live in the UK, you definitely need to make sure that you improve your queuing skills and know how to wait your turn. The next thing that British people love to do are using X's in their text or their emails as a friendly display of affection. However, the problem for us American expats or people from anywhere in the world moving to the UK who don't do this is it can be very confusing to decode. So an American might say like XOXO as kind of like a kisses and hugs sign off. I'm not really gonna like do it to every text though, or like really do it more than like to my mom in a card. British people love an X or multiple X's at the end of, for some people, like every text, but for others just like as a sign off. But the thing is, like, someone explain to me, someone please help me in the comments. I know that one X is like a we might not even be friends kind of sign off. Like I've had people who are basically just acquaintances, or like the plumber. Okay, the plumber hasn't actually sent an X, but like somebody that I'm working with in a professional sense sends an X, and I'm like, why are you sending me a kiss? Then you have somebody who's like a male friend who's definitely like nothing more than a male friend, hello, married, send a couple X's, and it's like, is that okay to send me X's? What does that mean? Then you've got the people who send like 86,000 X's. Funnily enough, my husband doesn't even send me X's, but other people do. Is this something that you don't actually send to your significant other? I don't think so, because I think I've seen other people, my husband I think is just not very British apparently. But yeah, so you have to kind of decode the X's, and then you feel bad, like if I don't send an X, they think I'm rude. I tend to go for the smiley faces because that's kind of what I would do rather than send an X, because I often feel like they'll think that I think that I'm British by sending an X, but then I also fear that they'll think that I'm rude by not sending an X, but I don't know how many X's to send. So if somebody could definitely answer this for me in the comments. British people love to send X's. I need some help on decoding how many to send, when to send them, if I should, and what I should think if a person I don't know is sending me an X. And the last thing that British people love to do is they love to discuss parking. People often say like, oh, British people love to talk about the weather. This is true, but it's also true, and I feel like not talked about enough. And I mentioned this in my video, maybe about things that I miss about America in relation to parking, but British people love to talk about parking. So parking here definitely is at a minimum. Small country, small roads, not really all designed for like mass parking areas. And whether it's outside of your house or whether it's, you know, at the shopping center or whether it's in a town, it's all about parking. Is it paid for parking? Is it free parking? And if it's free parking, then they will have to comment that that's really good that they have free parking. If it's paid for parking, you have a couple options, because you could talk about how it is cheap, which is not usually the case, but occasionally this happens where you could remark like, oh, wow, parking is only 50p for 6 hours. Like, that's actually really reasonable. They don't say it like that because I feel like no British person talks like that, but you know what I mean. Or most of the time it's expensive parking, and then that brings me back to the first thing I mentioned, which is British people like to complain. I'll give them this one because you can't do much about parking fees, but it definitely leads to some conversation and to connecting to people based on the fact they're all complaining about the expensive parking in neighborhoods. Like, we could look out of our window in our house and spend hours talking about who is parking in the wrong spot, who is taking our spot, who is taking our spot that isn't really our spot, but of course it's our spot because we've lived here for X amount of years and now it's become our spot. We see a new car who is parked somewhere even within 5 miles of us, and we're like, why are they parked there? There's just so much talk about parking, and I have to think that British people enjoy this based on how much they talk about it. Okay, so that brings me to the end of my video on things that I feel like British people like or enjoy doing, or failing that, do a lot. I would love your comments below if you're British or if you're from elsewhere and have noticed some of these things. It's always really interesting for me and my husband to discuss, because some things he doesn't even realize are things that he's doing or are things that are different from what I'm used to or our culture, except for when we're at the restaurant and we've all left him in the dust while he's still getting ready for the conversation. But it's an interesting topic, and I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you guys next time.